Hello, my name is Yudao. I am a monk here at SokukoJi. If you are inspired by these talks and these teachings, please consider joining us for our other forums, online or in person, and also consider helping us financially. We could use your support if you are able. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. This morning's Dharma talk is titled in the form of a question. Why are you listening to me? Why listen? Why listen to anything? And when you do listen, the awareness practice, the sitting practice of meditation, shikantaza, or even other forms of awareness practice, I'm not going to go down a list here, but there is quite a list. Very radical and simple form is shikantaza, just precisely this. If you can actually do, and it is a kind of doing, a just precisely this the rest of your life, then you won't do anything but receive this incredible world that you tend to cover up with hope and fear, conclusions, opinions, judgments, ethics, laws, rules. Laws and rules are necessary, but they're very specifically necessary in situations. The ego mind, the self-centered mind, the grasping, greedy mind tries to control, tries to get control so he, she, they will be protected from something, maybe many things. So it is about the awareness of that, not about changing gears and doing something else. It's more like less gears. It's more like if you use the idea of a vehicle, it's more like put it in neutral, just idle, not idle like laziness, but idle like hold still and watch what continues to go this way, go that way, go this way, go that way, go up, go down. Just observe that. Otherwise, you are missing your life. You're missing the very life that was served you in the form of blue eyes, tall stature, wide build, narrow build, high-powered conceptual intelligence, or maybe lacking in that area. Maybe very good dexterity with your hands and making things. Lots of variation. I could go on and on, as you know, as could you. Don't miss your life by covering it up because you're afraid. If you're successful at relatively covering things up, you won't know you're afraid. Someone else might sense you're fearful if they have a strong awareness and are on receive, but you're successful. For 30 years, 38 years, 62 years, you've covered up your fear by convictions, ideas, beliefs, opinions, judgments, evaluations, on and on, structures that you attach to that reinforce that part of the consciousness that is unreal. An ego, a self that is not, there is no center to anything. The whole world is caving in, coming apart, falling apart, building up, falling back down again, based on this kind of crazy politics of experience. It's not just the bad guys, we know who they are. And it's not just the good guys, it's both. Both of those, that mixture of this and that, right and wrong, is what continues to make this carnival of appearances, this Coney Island of the mind, come and go and come and go and come and go and start and stop and get better and get worse. People are always saying, this never should happen again. There's a terrible killing somewhere, which we just had a couple. We need to do something so it never happens again. It's just a ridiculous statement, even no matter how nice and kind and loving with good intentions that person is. It's just another display of confusion, albeit confusion that has a lot of conceptual intelligence around it that sees the causes and conditions, that is able to articulate it in such a fashion that it creates the illusion of what? It creates the illusion of what? Understanding. You think you understand. You do not understand. Why are you listening to me? Why listening? Why listen to everything I've just said? Now, I'm telling you why you're listening. Or maybe you can tell me. Because I'm saying something you're not going to hear in many places. You cannot figure this out. Does that mean you need to stop figuring it out? No, it's much more profound and vast than that. You need to be aware that you're trying to figure it out. You need to be aware of the ego. You do not have to fix anything. If you go in to try to fix, change, modify, reconstruct, rebuild, rehabilitate, recover, it's just more circles. Don't recover from anything. Find out what it is rather than recover from your idea of what it is, which could last 20, 30 years. So very convincing. You can brag to your friends. You can write a book. I did this, and then I recovered. Or maybe you'll just say, I did this, and I recovered without the particular sarcastic expression you just saw coming out of me. Look closely. Don't miss your life. See what this is. Why are you listening to me? Perhaps I'm saying something that is supportive to your awareness practice if you're a meditator. And here's the big word. Here's the big question. Not only why are you listening to me, but are you a student? Simple word, student, means that whatever shows up, you're learning from that. And you may not be learning in a relative way that you can go take a test score, get a test score from, but everything is testing you right now. Your life, your mind stream, everything is putting you on the spot. As long as there's a spot. And what is the spot? Ego. You don't have to get rid of that. Just see that it's unreal. When you begin to see that it's unreal, then embarrassment starts to show up. The last strategy of ego is embarrassment. You start to, oh, I'm kind of ashamed of myself for how foolish and how self-centered I've been and how I tried to put that forth as some kind of righteousness or opinion. So that embarrassment is one of the final refuges. But eventually that goes. But it won't go quickly, and it won't go completely. Why? It's an illusion. Everything is an illusion. There you can't find a thing that arises as separate from something else, for instance, the space that it's in, that is real. Nothing is real. Why are you listening to me? So that I can say, don't believe a word I say. Rare to find that. Find anyone who's saying anything because they're trying to convince you of something. I am trying to convince you of something. What am I trying to convince you of? Find out who you are. Don't get your identity from me, from Buddhism, from anything, from society, culture, ethics, morality. Don't get your idea from anything. Don't get your identity from anything. You find out who you are so that you know. And if you know what that is, you know it ultimately. Ultimate knowledge is the only kind of knowledge that there is fundamentally. Everything else is relative truth or a pack of lies or variations on a theme. While you're listening to me so that I can tell you, encourage you to listen to everything. Use the six sense fields, including the mind, to receive. This is what these are for. Ears don't produce, eyes don't produce sights, ears don't produce sounds. There's a contributory factor that gives us the illusion that we're creating that because of the way the consciousness is set up to be engulfed by concepts, fourth skandha, form, feeling, perception, concept, or thinking process, and consciousness as the sixth sense seals and their objects. Just receive everything. Receive the thinking. There's no one thinking there. That's an illusion. If you realize it, you'll be tongue-tied because what you're realizing, you realize there's no words for this. And yet this old man is endeavoring to, at least once a week, maybe more, come in here and use words to convey something to you that I'm seeing, I'm understanding, I'm perceiving, that has no concepts that come even close to what this is. So I'm encouraging you, my friends, my enemies, and anyone who's neutral, wherever you're at, listen, and you don't have to understand it. Just have to listen to it, because what is being communicated here that is riding on the back of conceptual horses, there's no rider there. But you have to watch those conceptual horses ride off into the mountains, into the purple haze, into the sagebrush. You have to watch that without chasing it, without believing it, without disbelieving it, without via negativity, and see that what is happening is an illusion. There is nothing occurring at all. That's why you're listening to me. I'm not saying there aren't hundreds of other places you can hear this same message. This is what the Buddha was talking about 2,500 years ago. And many other teachers down through the centuries, countless teachers. Why are you listening to anything? Important to listen, important to hear what your spouse is saying, to hear what your cat is saying. The cat is a great instructor. The cat knows you don't understand. They're way beyond that. Many animals are way, way beyond the simple thought process of human beings who are destroying the world. Cats aren't destroying any world. They're not interested in building houses, nor are dogs, nor are many other animals. If you taught a dolphin how to use a hammer, you'd probably use it for a paperweight. You'd have to give them some paper, though. Question?
Erlon Bowing, you said something like we could hear this in 100 other places, but
Yes.
it seems like if we were to put just like a speaker up there and it said exactly what you just said, there would still be something missing. Like why is it important to hear that from a teacher, or what's the difference there?
My understanding, based on what you're asking, would be that the expression is coming out of, in this situation, is coming out of what I'm looking at, not what I'm thinking about. I'm barely thinking at all. I wasn't thinking about cats speaking or not. So it just shows up. Don't have to think about it or think, what would be a cool thing to say right now? I'm not saying that was cool. Maybe it wasn't, maybe it was. Doesn't matter. So coming back to what it seems to be your question is the other direction would be strong conceptual structure to it. Not that there couldn't be a cool voice or a nice way of phrasing the whole thing. Am I close to what you're conceptual? And this to the ego mind, can be very appealing. Some people, I can name them, several scholars have extremely powerful intellects. And if you read closely, you see there's quite a bit of pride there. It doesn't show up as I'm right and everyone else is wrong, but it shows up as it's pretty crisp in terms of the, go ahead.
Erlon Bowing, I think you just answered it, but is the pride, does that show up in the specificity and the tightness?
It can show up in that way, but it isn't necessarily the specificity itself. It's the appearance of a specifier. Specificity is fine, but the specifier makes it more of a demand or more of a fixation on it. This is right. This is correct. How I understand this is correct. You can read, I'm sure you have, read really wonderful texts that delineate or explain the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, the 12 links, or whatever. I could go on and on as you could explain it, but there's something about it. I don't know. Maybe you have words for it.
I have another question.
Yes.
There's been a number of teachers over the years who kind of, if not outright, just tell their students not to record what they're saying. They don't want books published. They don't want people writing down what they're saying,
Yes.
even their own words. Is there something about the situationality of the communication that's missed when we just repeat the words?
Well, I would comment on those teachers. And I would just say they just teach different. They understand different. They teach different. I don't teach. Not following into tracks of anybody. I'm teaching out of what I'm looking at. So Dogen was teaching out what he was looking at. Trungpa Rinpoche, or any teacher, even teachers that are obscure, that don't even have a reputation at all, or if they're a true teacher, which they could be, teaching out of what they see, what is showing up in their consciousness. Go ahead.
I'm bowing. I have another direction, another question.
Yes.
I'm confused when you say that senses don't produce, and to use the ear as an example, my understanding is there's an eardrum, so there is some kind of like replication, like the sound is having to be like produced with that organ. What does that mean in terms of like production or receiving? Sorry, but just unnecessary.
Let's just keep it very simple. What do you want to know? I can get into that structure that you laid out there. What do you want to know? Or do you just want to say that I'm wrong?
No. Maybe I do. Real mowing.
Yes.
I think it's sort of in the area of the question, like if a tree falls in the forest and no one hears it, does it make a sound?
Of course it does. Just no one hears it. Could have answered that years ago, but I kept thinking there was some kind of special answer for it. So I just answered it. You don't have to ask that question anymore. It's interesting though. Someone says that they're just being kind of tricky, but it's based on belief in relative truth. When if you take it further than that, of course someone hears it. It's just it's an illusion. It's an illusion if someone hears it. It's an illusion if no one hears it. It's an illusion if there's no tree. It's an illusion if there's a tree. It does not matter. This and that. This is just a fundamental teaching that goes back way before just about anybody showed up. Advaita, non-dual, not two. Simply put, not two. Justice as it is, not two. If the two shows up, then even if it's a very slight two-ness that shows up, you and how you feel, you and what you're thinking about, you and what's for breakfast, anything like that is the very nature of illusion. It's realistic, it's powerful, and if you're hooked into it, it will run your life. But if you know it's unreal, then you're not concerned with what happens. To the extent that you're not even concerned with how you feel, you'll notice how you feel. You might be able to say, I don't feel so good, or I feel really good today, or things are, not so good. I'm kind of bummed out today or something. Not a problem for you anymore. Whereas there was a time where you would leave that for what caused it, or leave that for how to fix it. You would not be respectful and appreciative of what arises in dependent origination by taking some things personally and some things impersonally. Those are not two. Everything is completely personal. Everything is your fault. You get credit for everything, and nothing happens. So those are all relative statements relative words about something that is completely impossible to express. But that doesn't mean that consciousness doesn't receive this or see this. It just means that if there's a person or an individual or an ego that is absorbed or is using the consciousness as energy to be a separate being who can get somewhere, a separate being who can succeed or avoid failing or any of that, and consciousness is used in that way, then it is not on receive. It's trying to produce something, success.
And I'm bowing. With the talk title, why are we listening to you? The other side, like I'm looking at the students' participation, like why are we asking you questions?
Yes.
Um, does having like does is asking a question a kind of practice?
Yes.
Or I'm bowing.
You ask the question, then the one who's a teacher or another Sangha member, if you're in a situation where you're talking about the Dharma with other students, there can be Q&A happening there too. Coming from the teacher might have quite a bit different quality or intensity or texture or um, definiteness about it, even though it might show up in such a way that it seems imprecise.
I'm bowing. I'm having a hard time getting a question what the area that's coming out of is. It looks like there's been many times I've even just asking you a question can loosen my grip up on the thing I'm wanting to know about just by offering that and having
Yes.
curiosity. And I'm just wanting to go in there more, but I don't have a question to do that.
Sometimes people will say, well, I have a question, but I think I already know what you'll say. So I think, well, that's pretty uppity of you. If I don't know what I'm going to say, but you know what I'm going to say, that is a form of cover up. And so it's an unwillingness to not know that is covered up by the thinking process mind has very strong connections and actually has a grip on the ego. Ego wants to know. Ego is not about to put itself in any kind of vulnerable situation of not knowing. So therefore, it all already kinds of, well, I kind of know what. Yeah, well, I know. I've listened to Sokuzan. I know what he says. So pretty much know if I say this, he's just going to say that. So this is um, it's not an obvious form, but it's a very subtle form of arrogance. Yes.
I'm bowing. And the area that's been most recently showing up in me is when you and I work together on like a project, like a building project,
Yes.
and you tell me something you've already told me, and I see how much I don't want to hear you anymore. There's like an intense like aversion to what you're saying. What's at the? It's like the. Don't you think I know this? What's at the root of that attitude?
Are you saying, I mean, I could convert this into pretty mundane language. Are you just tired of hearing an old man repeat himself a lot?
It feels like more than that.
Well, what is it then? You tell me.
a kind of arrogance or yeah, arrogance, I think.
I think that's what it is. I've had other teacher-student situations where I would point something out to someone and they've actually said, don't you think I know that? This is someone that's a student of mine is saying that as if I'm correcting them or something. And I don't recall correcting. It seems like I might, if anything, might be reminding them of something. It doesn't seem like they're looking at that. And so that kind of, do you think I know that kind of thing? So you're saying that's happening, but you're not saying anything? So let's come down to the basic. What do you want to know?
Or lawn bowing. when we ask a question of the teacher, is it more about the receiving than what's being received?
Yes, thank you. You know, I've said it many times, it might sound ridiculous to you. You might, and if it sounds that way, you have questions, this is a really good time, especially in a Sangha situation, where there's a community of people all studying this together. You know, I don't see you all for a week or maybe longer than that. You might come back once in a while. I don't know what you're doing in your spare time, but I don't have any spare time. I just don't. I don't have spare time. There's just this over and over and over again. So I'm saying, spend some time find out who you are. Don't let this go unexamined. Don't let this go within. Find out who you are. Spend time on the cushion. 30 seconds, 30 minutes, 30 days, whatever you need to find. Hold still and observe. You don't have to join Buddhism. You don't have to be a student of mine. But if you're listening to me, you're a student for a few minutes. Listen to what I'm saying. Find out who you are. Find out that you are, I can tell you who you are, but you need to discover this. You are consciousness only. You're not a living being. You're not even alive. Life and death comes and goes. Temporary life, temporary death, temporary life, temporary death. Find out what's permanent. Find out what does not come and go. That's possible for you. Further question in that area? No. It's a good area, yes.
Congressman Bowen,
Yes.
when we're listening to you, it seems like there's almost like a resonance, some sort of pleasure or food that we're getting, and it feels good. But yet we have to do the work.
Yes.
So what are we receiving when we're listening to
Just
you?
like if you read the Sin Sen Ming, you read the Sokuzan, or you study Trungpa Rinpoche, you study Koban, you study any teacher, you study the words of the Buddha, it just feels good to study. Some people, and I'm one of them, spent many years and hours and days and just reading the text over and over and over, reading the Heart Sutra, reading the Diamond Sutra, reading the commentaries on those, reading those, and there's something about that arises, at least in my mind, and somewhat sounds like it's similar to what you're saying. You just want to hear that said again. Sometimes that's why we've studied my teacher, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. I started studying his book, Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism, in 75. Started studying it in 73 myself, and then started with the community in 1975. I've studied it at least once a week, sometimes 2 or 3 times a week, for all that time, over 50 years. And here we are, we're still studying it. That's a powerful, powerful book. And if I go, even as many times as I've been through it, go back and read it, it's like I've just never read that before. It's just such an incredible way, even though it's translated and edited, not translated, but edited quite a bit by Marvin Casper and John Baker back in 1970, 73, I guess it was, 72. It's just amazing ability to take a language that wasn't even his and move it into something that he had a deep understanding, and move into another language and be able to express that. Quite astonishing genius, spiritual genius of the first order. I'm not saying he doesn't have a lot of bad press. Anytime you step out and make statements about anything, you're going to get a lot of bad press. And you might have quite a few people believe that. If they believe it, then it doesn't mean it's bad press. Or it doesn't mean it's bad, it means it's bad press.
Congressman Bowen,
Yes,
are we receiving more than the Dharma? In other words, I believe we're watching someone receive from consciousness, not think and tell us.
yes. If you're watching me, I'm not thinking.
So
At
what
all.
are we receiving when we're receiving your receiving?
So I can say it in an ultimate way. Consciousness is not a separate thing. It's not a separate being. So if you want to see what I'm seeing or what is being talked about here, then don't stop your thoughts. Don't encourage your thoughts. Don't do anything with your thoughts, just observe them. And eventually that starts to come apart because the only thing that has any reality is there's consciousness. The thoughts that come and go and come and go. If you grab onto them and try to get somewhere, try to have some kind of progress there, you have spiritual materialism. Takes a long time to do this. You can't do this in 3 weeks, maybe not even 3 lifetimes. I don't know. That's a relative statement about something that's difficult to track down. But if you're listening to this, you've probably been here many times listening to this kind of teaching, not necessarily from this person or from this consciousness. So what you're fundamentally tuning into, if you're listening, not judging, evaluating, concluding, or any of the other analyzing processes that go on in the mind that are quite often in cahoots with ego. If you're able to just receive, then you are in consciousness only. In the Hindu traditions, this is called satsang or satsanga, sitting in the presence of truth. We don't in the Buddhist tradition generally that isn't promoted too much, a little bit, but not much. But it's very powerful just to sit. I experienced that with my teacher, Trungpa Rinpoche. All I had to do was just sit near him. You would be listening to what he had to say, but something about just being in the presence of that being is at once energizing and stimulating and encouraging, and depending on what's happening in your own mental dynamic at that particular time, can be frightening and terrifying and make you want to run away and try to do some backfiller in there with all the reasons why you left. Because, and they could be relatively true. Or
Chandra bowing, kind of on those same lines, but I still want to ask a direct question. What can we take to the cushion from what we're actually, from listening to the teacher, from just the act of listening?
anything that shows up, take to the cushion. In other words, and in the same words, sit down, hold still. If nothing happens, then nothing happens. If memories of something that was said happen, then just observe those, no matter what occurs. As soon as you sit down and hold still, this is the Buddha, this is the awakened one. And then you have to watch all the things that get in the way of seeing, get in the way of your fundamental realization of what this is. It can take a long time from the point of view of a clock. But from the point of view of ultimate truth, it's already the case. This is why the Northern and Southern school in ancient China was some fighting back and forth about instant enlightenment or gradual enlightenment. Well, they're the same thing, and they're not two, and they're also not the same thing, and they're also two. You have to take the non-duality all the way around the spectrum. You can't just say it's not two and leave it there. So as a teaching, you might say that, but then at the same time, you're saying, you're lying. Being aware is what's important, not what shows up, because if there's a human form here, you're going to lie. You'll be dishonest with yourself and with others. Be responsible for that. Don't try to fix yourself and be a saint. Yes.
For long bowing, is lying in that sense the same thing as being partial bowing?
Yes, and partiality can be just an impulsive kind of cover-up partiality or stopping partiality. A low level of anxiety or fear might cause you to push or shut down. But over time, that eventually one becomes more and more responsible. When I say responsible, you just realize that the emotions and feelings that come and go in the mind stream are not yours. You don't have thoughts and feelings. There isn't anyone there. There's just thoughts and feelings, which are dependently arisen. Pratitya samutpada, the fancy word for this causes that, causes that, causes that, causes that. But there's no singularity called a me anywhere or a them anywhere. There's just dependent origination. There's an incredible display, an incredible magical illusion. Jishin.
Jishin bowing. What is about the illusion that it doesn't go completely? Bowing.
It doesn't need to go anywhere because it's an illusion. So once you see that it's an illusion, then it might get more active. You might have a whole paddock full of horses kicking up their heels in your mind. Not a problem. Finally, you're able to actually live your karma instead of trying to stop certain things happening in your mind because you think they're bad, or you think you shouldn't feel that way, shouldn't think that way, or a really nice person would not do that or not think that. You don't have to do that. You can liberate yourself from that, from the chain of your beliefs, your disbeliefs, your hope and fear. But you have to look at the hopes and fears and disbelief in order to see that it's unreal. Because seeing that it's unreal is what breaks the chains. And if you think you have to pull the chains apart, this is just more warfare, more fighting with everything. This is why there's so much craziness in the world, why people are shooting each other, because of incredible insanity and fear. People have to defend themselves from the other. Paranoia. Yes.
Chandra Movaling, you have a couple of questions from YouTube.
Where's Mioka today?
Not here.
So you're filling in for Mioka?
I all of a sudden thought somebody's got to look at YouTube.
Oh, good. Go ahead.
Ath and Naveed. Ath asks, sometimes avoidance or procrastination serves us well for all practical purposes. How or why does that mean missing one's life? Like, wasn't Dogen, didn't Dogen run away through the window away from a boring interview? That was Coben, actually, right?
It was Coben. And who said it was boring? You said it was boring. It was this Ath. You said it was boring. I doubt that I said it was boring because I know he wasn't bored. He wasn't bored with anything. I knew him. He was just completely present. And when he was present, you could have some conjecture about, you could say, well, I think he was trying to teach him, or maybe who knows what it was, but there's no way to know. The whys and the wherefores don't function in the enlightened being. Cause and effect does not function there in the same way it does in someone who's operating out of hope and fear, operating out of fear of something bad and hope for something better, or out of what somebody thinks about how they look or how they appear. Doesn't function. They function out of dependent origination, as Trungpa Rinpoche once said. So now that your gurus or your teachers are past, who's your teacher now? And he said situations. That is probably the most accurate way you could say it. Whatever happens, it isn't a cause and effect. It tells you what you need to do next. And so you proceed out of your understanding of the illusion rather than your positionality in terms of, are you going to benefit from doing this? Will you look good? What will people think of you if you are unethical? No, you operate out of reality because you're not separate from it. You may continue for another 20 or 30 years appearing as a living being, but you've already died. This doesn't mean you won't suffer, won't have headaches. I don't mean that. But I'm saying you already you're not even here anymore. Where are you? You aren't anywhere. A location is gone. That's an illusion that is gone. Time is an illusion that is gone. It's still there. It's an illusion, but it's gone as far as its hold on you. It doesn't have the hold on you anymore. It's not operating in such a way as to cause you to function.
Chandra Movaling, he started that question with sometimes avoidance or procrastination serve us well for all practical purposes. How or why does that mean missing one's life?
So if you avoid something, it's not that you shouldn't. Maybe you should in that situation. It's not that you don't procrastinate, and maybe in that situation. But if that is some kind of an agenda about pushing things away, then aspects of one's particular karma in this life as a ath living in the UK and living a certain way and having certain kinds of stories and things, mother, father, brother, sister, and so on, family, relationships, that structure is happening. And if you're pushing things away, then some part of the life is happening because you were born. So you're not missing the life because you showed up as a living being and you were a toddler and you grew up and you were taken care of, or maybe ignored, or maybe abused. Very possible. But that's your life. And then at some point, the ego takes over and it starts to manipulate and control, and you start to actually change the causes and conditions that needed to arise in your life for you to fundamentally see who you are. That's available to everybody. Buddha nature is in everyone all the time, but it can be covered up by you going this way and moving to Vermont because you don't like this, or you're trying to get away from this person. You're trying to get more of this, less of that. Operating in the illusion just reinforces the illusion. And so when the body mind dies, you're still believing in the illusion. Consciousness doesn't go anywhere. So you come back in another embryo as another life and continue the same search for happiness. And what's being said here from the point of view of the spiritual path, this is happiness. This is what you're looking for. What you're looking for is right here. This is it. You don't have to go on a big search for something else. As the sage, the Advaita sage of the last century, Papaji said, give up the search. He told his students, give up the search. And I would say you might have to see the way you're searching rather than try to give it up. I would teach that way. I would just say, watch the way you grasp passion, grasping, greediness. Just observe that. Be responsible for what's happening in your mind rather than try to change it into a good person. I wouldn't even say give up the search, because then you become someone who's given up the search. Awareness, yes.
Padma bowing, Naveed asks, who is it or what is it that asks the question?
So that shows up only shows up in consciousness. The actual thing that's happening is just consciousness, but it's functioning out of the illusion where there's some kind of suffering or pain or confusion. So one is wondering, this is a crazy life and I'm having trouble, ups and downs, back and forth. And I find a situation where it seems like someone understands this, what this is, teaching, whether it's the Buddha's Dharma or maybe another kind of teaching. So you ask a question about it, not a mundane question of how do I improve. Oh, you can have there's several people that'll teach that way. They'll tell you how to fix yourself through this or that or the other thing. One example is cognitive behavioral therapy that relatively will work. It does work. It's just that it doesn't reach the fundamental area that has to be faced in consciousness, because otherwise, because you can't solve this, cognitive behavioral therapy will not handle the ultimate existential issue, which is death. Whereas spiritual path looks directly at life and death because they're not two.
Padma bowing, Naveed has another question. Is there a difference between curiosity and asking a question?
There's probably a lot of differentiation there as far as the texture and the shape of the whole thing, but very similar. We're curious about that's one of the things of the six realms. The human realm is the one that has curiosity, and the only animals that are allowed in there are cats, which might as well be humans, or actually they've not been cursed with being humans. They've been blessed by being cats. Just saying. Yes.
Bowing, Ath asks another question. Is the last day or last hour in one's life a critical or decisive time that should be spent sitting down, still, symmetrical, or is it too late?
Never too late. And the most critical time is right now. There isn't any time. It looks like it. It's an incredible illusion to think that there's a past and a future. There's just this, and it's always here. And if you realize this, the boundary between meditation, which you might have been practicing for 20 or 30 years, and the space where you think you're not meditating, but you're at the grocery store buying something. Those are not two different things. When you actually realize that another way of saying it maybe more positively or maybe negatively is that you're always in a state of meditation, because it's not a state. It's just mind only. It's consciousness only that sees everything that's happening. The car driving down the highway, the thought coming up about what the neighbor next door is doing, making that racket next door, and the dog barking, and a memory you had of something that happened 3 days ago. Those are all rising in consciousness. The only ones that are bound by any kind of form are things that look so real, like time looks real. space looks real, but the space and the time in the mind, if you haven't noticed, are unreal. You cannot find a past and a future in the mind. Just like when you're having a dream, the past and the future are extremely vague in that area. Because it's more and more vague the further and further we get towards consciousness only and less grasping at a form, rejecting a form, or ignoring a form. Yes, Mahesh.
Mahesh Bowing. So once consciousness realizes its true nature through this self, how come it won't be born again through this form or through this self again?
It
Bowing.
may be. It may come back in and be according to the Buddhist tradition, someone who observes, receives the Bodhisattva vow. You continue to come back into this realm until the realm is completely empty. So you'll be back here forever. You'll come back over and over and over again, returning to save all beings who aren't really beings, but they think they are, and they're suffering, and they're caught up in that solar disk of life and death, life and death, life and death. And they're suffering, they're torturing each other. So you may come back to give them an opportunity to see way beyond the contamination of the illusion that they think is so true. And then also you could go to, if I use my imagination a little bit with it, I would say you could go completely into, the body-mind complex would let go of the consciousness, and you go completely into what's conventionally called, you want to call it convention, the light. You go right back into ultimate reality. There'd be no remainder. But then it depends on the karma, causes and conditions. It depends on that particular person. A person can attain realization and still have causes and conditions that still need to be addressed in the rest of this life and possibly in the next life. So they may be back lifetime after lifetime, just like the karma pause. But again, I think the thing that's important to understand there, if you can, is that it's not an individual that's doing this. There are no individuals. There's just consciousness only. Consciousness always finds its own form, and that may be another lifetime. You may pass away. I may pass away. Jishin may pass away. Jen may pass away, and all of us may return here as Jen. I don't mean that literally, but the consciousness that's there, that area, we're not able to take conventional science and go in there and sort that out because the very nature of it is formless. Go ahead if you have a further question.
Mahesh Bowing. So whatever karma that I make, I need to go through it in my next lifetimes, or can it be distributed across other beings? Bowing.
Yes, all of that, everything is possible, and the 15 things you didn't mention are possible. So there's all kinds of possibilities. That consciousness always finds its own form, and the form it finds is not only not real as it shows up, but it's completely real as it is. So it's fundamentally real, which means it's just Buddha nature. It's just consciousness, but there's no particular identity there. There's no personhood there. But you don't mind because you know that your true nature is not a singular situation, person, emotion, feeling, memory, or facial expression. You've been liberated from that. At the same time, you still get up in the morning and scratch your head. You still function as a separate being. That's the thing that's amazing about it, is that situation is not separate from the ultimate situation of consciousness when it goes into the light. Not separate. Not the same, not separate. Thank you so much.